The anime begins with Dog pondering about life as a megaloboxer. Megaloboxing is an advanced version of boxing which incorporates the use of high-tech gears. Dog typically fights fixed games in underground megaloboxing arenas, where he throws the games in order to make money at the behest of his one-eyed coach. He gets excited after hearing about Megalonia, a huge megaloboxing battle royale with an insane prize money. After a fight with his coach, Dog furiously rides his bike and almost got into an accident with the organizer of Megalonia, Shirato Yukiko, who was accompanied by the reigning Megalonia champion Yuri. Shirato stops Yuri and Dog from trading blows after this incident. Back in the underground arena, Dog argued with his coach and refused to throw any more games when Yuri showed up looking for a fight. Episode 2. Despite all attempts by Coach Nanbu to stop them, Dog and Yuri engage in a match. The Megalonia champion dominates the fight and defeats Dog in a show-offish manner. As Yuri left the arena, Dog challenges him, but the champ says he has to meet him at the Megalonia first. Now, determined to make it to the tournament, Dog refuses to throw a match, and this enraged the underground arena boss Mr. Fujimaki. Nanbu negotiates with the boss in order to save his remaining eye, promising him that they'd pay him after Dog wins the Megalonia tournament. As the duo prepares for the grand event coming in 3 months, Nanbu makes a fake ID for Dog, and the rookie fighter's new name is revealed to be Joe. Episode 3. After registering Joe for Megalonia, they discover that he's the least ranked fighter at 257th. While Nanbu tries to prepare Joe and his gear for the Final Four, they meet a young boy named Sachio and his friends. The kids steal technology and sell them to shop owners for candy bars. When the shop owner tries to beat up Sachio and friends during an argument, Joe steps in and saves the kids. They follow Nanbu back to Joe's training gym and Sachio points out the flaws in his gear. Sachio gets in trouble while stealing gear parts for Joe at the shop. In an attempt to rescue him, Joe fights the thug but his gear falls apart in the process. He's now gearless, but with specific instructions from Sachio, Joe was able to defeat the thug. They later agree to go to Megalonia together. Episode 4. Joe enters the ring for his first fight under the name Gearless Joe, which describes his barehanded condition. Joe's first opponent was a ruffian named Samejima the Shark, who's been repeatedly disqualified from his previous matches. After a tough battle, Gearless Joe ends up beating him. Joe goes on to win 2 other fighters and advances to rank 102 on the board. Nanbu searches for a highly ranked player around 49th to 30th to be Joe's next opponent when a 17th ranked fighter approaches him with an offer. The man spoke in a friendly manner, but Nanbu was shocked by his scar-filled body. Episode 5. A flashback reveals that the 17th ranked fighter used to be a war hero. His name is Aragaki and he worked with Nanbu successfully in the ring before he was deployed and ended up being declared dead after a bombing incident. Back then, this news devastated Nanbu to the point of shutting down his gym and his coaching career, but Aragaki takes this act of quitting as a betrayal. Aragaki tells Nanbu he intends to destroy Joe. The coach tries to call off the fight, but Joe adamantly steps in the ring with Aragaki and gets knocked down not long after the match began, and then the count begins. Speaking of hitting things, why don't you give that like and subscribe button a jab and get guaranteed regular dose of quality content? Episode 6. The next episode starts with a flashback of Aragaki training under Nanbu. In the present, Joe stands up and the match continues. This fiery battle went on till the 5th round where Aragaki and his team decided to forfeit and Joe was declared the winner. Nanbu talks to Aragaki later and he reveals that he's bleeding from his knee into his prosthetic legs, and if he continued, he could have been bedridden. Later on, Glenn Burroughs, known as the Bloody Lion, is announced as the last entrant of the Final Four of the Megalonia. Yuri and Makio discuss Gearless Joe's success so far. Episode 7. After the massive upset he caused, Joe became quite famous around the city. A match between AI gear user Shirato Mikio and another talented boxer, Sugar Hill, is fixed, which some believed would determine the final entrant of the Megalonia Final Four. Mikio decimates his opponent and then challenges Joe to fight him for a ticket to Megalonia. Joe was still healing after his brutal fight with Aragaki. It turns out Mikio was jealous of his sister Yukiko, who ran the company and was determined to take her place. Nanbu and the gang all arrive at the arena for the match, only to get threatened by Mikio. He revealed that he's aware of their fake ID and past underground misdeeds, and he'd expose them should they try to enter the ring. Filled with distraught, Joe and his gang stayed back, and Mikio won by default. Episode 8. After the frustrating events of the last episode, Fujimaki revealed to Nanbu that someone had been previously snooping around for information about Joe, and that he fell for a bluff as Mikio had the proof to back up his claims. The two meet with a former Shirato worker for some information on Mikio, and he reveals the boxer's feud with his sister as well as his gear secret, that it could only sense an opposing gear's movement and hence it was useless against Joe. Nanbu meets with Yukiko and comes clean about their past, but she doesn't listen to him and rather locks him in the room. During Mikio's announcement as the final fighter for Megalonia, Gearless Joe storms in and gives a speech. Yukiko declares that their fight must be held. The fight between Gearless Joe and Shirato Mikio begins. Episode 9. Mikio starts brutally beating Joe. His AI gear had been upgraded to be able to sense organic structures too, so he could predict and copy Joe's moves. Mikio uses the advantage and pummels Joe for a couple more rounds, until his gear overloads due to his use of stimulant drug. Joe takes the opportunity, deceives Mikio, and lands a winning punch. Joe was now heading to Megalonia, and the episode closes with Nanbu telling mob boss Mr. Fujimaki that Joe and Sachio doesn't know what comes next. Episode 10. Mr. Fujimaki tells Nanbu that the game is over, and it was revealed that they plan to throw a climatic match at Megalonia after making a name for Joe, so the mob boss can win big through the bats. Joe gets enraged by this information and rides away from Nanbu on his bike. The next day, a press conference was held for Megalonia, but neither Joe nor his team came. Nanbu says that Sachio was only using Joe for his advantage, in order to find his father's killer in Shirato. The coach convinces Sachio to kill Yukiko at a party, but he declines and says his revenge would be reaching the top of Megalonia. Nanbu puts Sachio in Yukiko's care in order to save him from the mob boss. A match between Yuri and Pepe Iglesias took place after this, and the champion referred to as the King of Kings won and advanced to the final. He had a conversation with Joe afterwards. Episode 11. For his semi-final match with Glenn Burrows, Joe entered the ring with the gear, leaving everyone shocked. Nanbu was watching the match from an executive room above with Fujimaki and his thugs in something akin to a hostage situation. Joe was holding back during the fight with the Bloody Lion when Yuri whispered something in his ear which spurred him on. After being taunted by the mob boss, Nanbu screams into Joe's ears to take back his fight and his future. Joe takes his gear off and swiftly defeats Glenn. Then Joe finally qualified for the finals against Yuri. He reached the executive room to see that Fujimaki had taken Nanbu's remaining eye, and the blind coach revealed that it was his choice to settle the boss this way for their freedom. Episode 12. Yukiko fulfills her goals and signs a huge contract with the government on the use of gears, only to get stunned by Yuri's decision to fight Joe in the finals without one. Coach Nanbu, now being blind, recruits Aragaki to train Joe in his stead. Yuki meets Mikio to help him remove the integrated gear from his body, and although it was a painful process, Mikio had it done. Yukiko now contemplates canceling the match with the information she and her assistant got through Joe's ID card, which Sachio dropped. She visits Mikio and sees that after 5 days of excruciating pain, Yuri was now up and boxing again. At the end of the episode, she returns Joe's ID card to him and informs him that Yuri was now gearless as well. Episode 13. It's been a long ride for Gearless Joe, but he finally gets into the ring with Yuri, the King of Kings. Yuri's body is now full of scars in place of a gear. From the beginning, Yuri dominates the match, showing why he is the champion. Yuri rains a flurry of punches on him, while Joe can only keep his guard up. He soon knocks Joe down, but the gearless fighter gets back up. In another location, Yukiko is calmly pitching the use of gears to a military committee. The final fight of Megalonia goes on to be longer than any other we have seen before, as the fighters slug it out, punch after punch, even to the 11th round. In the 13th round, both fighters begin to appreciate each other, as the fight has elevated their abilities. Both of them share a final punch, and what we see next is a 1-year time skip. All the characters, Nanbu, Sachio, and his crew are enjoying their lives. Yuri is now confined to a wheelchair. Sachio mentions that Yukiko came to congratulate Joe, and we see Joe riding his bike to the gym. In the final credit roll, a black screen confirms that Joe won the knockout in the 13th round and the season comes to an end. If this video gets 2,000 likes, we will recap the second season soon. So don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button, and perhaps you'd be able to knock out your rivals like Joe did, after we constantly feed you with great anime content.